Ned, welcome to the podcast, mate, and welcome to Bondi.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
How are you settling in?
It's been good. Yeah, first time in Australia, first time in Bondi. So the weather today is not, what I'm looking for, but the last 3 weeks have been pretty perfect. So I'm excited to be here.
What's been your favorite thing so far?
I think everything about it. I like the beach. I like the sunshine. I like the coffee. Everyone's been friendly. I've obviously got some friends down here who've shown me around. So it's pretty good start.
How does the coffee compare to the New York coffee? You don't hear good things about the New York coffee.
It depends what you're going for. I think the cold brew in New York is better.
Right.
But I think like long black, Australia
is the winner.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Mate, we're going to sort of tell the story of how you ended up from New York to Bondi. There's quite a bit's going on over the last few years, mate.
Between there, yeah.
But I suppose in terms of where we start the conversation, I'm hoping you can tell me about that version of Ned that lived in New York.
A different version of me, for sure. I think it was a version that was wearing a mask. I was doing what I think society programs us to do, which is follow the path. And I was very good at it. Like I got in a seat, I worked my way up, I climbed the ladder at Amex, which is, a very well-known company. And I was very good at my job, but I wasn't happy. And I got to this crossroads of 30 years old, director level job, had all the success on paper, but knew this wasn't it. And that's where I ultimately had to make a split. But it was 8 years of just living a life that I knew deep down I didn't want, but I didn't have the courage to step off the path.
So let's talk about how you got onto the path in the first place. So if I do my maths right, you got onto that path at around 21, 22?
22, I had a couple changes of direction. 22, I graduated from university. I had a chance to play pro football, and I ended up turning it down. And I went to New York. It was a case of money wasn't great, opportunity wasn't that secure. And for that reason, I led to okay, let's go down the safe path. Let's get a job in New York. And I got a desk job. And I had very quickly a lot of regret about that because I realized not a lot of people get a chance to play pro soccer. I turned down a really good opportunity, even if it wasn't a lot of money. And I tried to do a 180, which was essentially 6 months into my corporate job career. I said, you know what? No, I have to go try this. So I ended up essentially forcing my way back into the pro soccer market, which had closed off on me at that point.
So what did that look like?
I bought a one-way ticket to Europe. So essentially, I emailed everyone that I potentially had an opportunity with before. They all were not interested.
So clubs in England or in the continent as well?
I was focused originally on the US. And at that point, every door had closed on me because again, it's you stepped away from the game for 6 months, hadn't been playing. They were we're not interested. So I thought to myself, okay, if we're going to really do this, we're going to go big and we're going to go to Europe. So I said, if we're going to go for it, let's truly go for it. So I bought a one-way ticket to London and I had nothing but a bag and a passport. And I said...
And a pair of football boots.
And a pair of football boots. I said, we're going to fight our way in. And it was a case of a little bit of delusion, but I also knew I was good enough. So it was that crossroads of I had played with guys at that point that were playing good level. So I knew it wasn't a skill gap. It was a case of could I find the opportunity? Could I take it? And I moved there, knocked on the door for 3 months, moved around the country, was living in hostels and Airbnbs, had no money to my name. And I remember running out of money, had $37 in my bank account. And I got a call that said, are you available tomorrow? 1 day trial. And I ended up getting on a train. I went up to Nottingham and unfortunately played well enough to get invited back for a week.
So what team was this, Ned?
That was Alfreton Town at the time. So it was week trial, 2 week trial, 3 week trial, and then eventually signed my first contract. And that was my gateway into professional soccer.
Just a quick word from me, guys, and please don't skip over this. Do you want a free coffee from me? We're making some really good progress on Spotify and YouTube. I've set myself a goal of having 1,000 followers on Spotify and 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of 2025. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to pause this episode right now, jump into your Spotify app, click that follow button, then jump into your YouTube app, click that subscribe button. It really, really helps with the show, and it would mean an awful lot to me. And as a thank you to everyone that does that, here's what I'm proposing. If you see me out and about in person, and you can show me on your phone that you are subscribed to the podcast on YouTube and following it on Spotify, I'll buy you a coffee. Can't say fairer than that. But here's the thing, you've got to be subscribed on YouTube and following it on Spotify to qualify for that free coffee. How does that sound? Cheers. See, before you got that phone call, like when you say you were knocking doors, like were you literally turning up the training grounds of football pitches and being like, hey, just introducing yourself to the coaches? Or was there an email? Was there a phone call?
I would email, I probably emailed like 150, 200 clubs around the country. Anywhere I could get an email, I emailed them. I wrote letters to the training grounds, and I showed up at the training grounds and knocked on the door, like outside the gate, and was like give me a chance to play. And 99 out of 100 said no, not interested. Because when I think about the optics of that, it's like 22, 23-year-old American, like not the dream, like English market, right? Usually it's a pretty bad persona there. And it's eventually someone was like, you know what? Like, why not? Like, let's give him a shot. And fortunately I took it.
Wow. So where did things go from there after you signed that contract?
I signed like right at the end of the season. So it was like 2 months left, which I wish I had longer runway, but I had enough runway that I showed people that I could play. That led me to then Kidderminster Harriers, where I played the next season. But that's where ultimately that like fear crept in of where's this taking me? You know, I was on a year contract, like was making okay money, but had no sense of like stability. And I was getting the whispers of people back in New York saying, what are you doing? Like
friends, family?
Definitely family, and definitely some friends of like, you know, where are you taking this? Like, is this going to be is this a long-term thing? Like, I think my parents were very much programmed to follow the corporate path. And I don't want to say they weren't supportive, but they definitely, like any parent, they want the best for you. So when there's when their kid's on a 1-year contract, not making great money, not really sure where the path is, they're naturally going to want to protect you and say, you know, maybe corporate is better. And that always was like a little bit of a crossroads, to the point that fear took over. And I was worried about stepping into the job market at like 28, 30 years old with no experience after a failed potentially soccer career. So I ended up just doing a 180 and going back to New York.
So how long were you in England for?
1.5 years, roughly.
Do you remember that moment where the fear got too much for you and you just decided to jack it all in?
Yes. I remember it slowly started to fade, where the point where I was not enjoying playing anymore because I was so stressed, where I would go into, you know, for most of my life, like soccer or football was a really enjoyable experience for me, where I was around my mates, I was performing really well, and I was always like, you're always at kind of that top level if you want to keep chipping away, like to get to high school, university, to pro level, you're kind of always at the top level of your group, which made it really enjoyable. But then you go into a situation where it's now your job for the first time, and then you're really stressed, and then you're worrying about, you know, you're 23, 24, 25, and like you've got the market and economics, and like what is my value, and you know, the older you get, the lower you're, like there was just so many things in play.
And you're one injury away.
And I had an injury at one point that took me out for a month, and I saw the business side where like they just bring someone else in, and it scared me a lot. And once I stopped enjoying playing, I knew that I had a problem of like, if I wasn't enjoying playing, I wasn't going to play my best. And like, what was I doing at that point? And it was just a lot of emotion that drew me to just walking away.
Shit. Before, there must have been some good moments in there in that 1.5 years, like playing for those two teams. Like, do you want to share any moments that sort of stand out now?
I think playing Jack Grealish was a big moment, just because it was like 6 months before that, I was living in hostels, knocking on doors, trying to get a way in. And then all of a sudden you're lined up against Jack Grealish on the touchline. Like, that was a cool moment for me. That was probably the highlight of my experience over there. And just even to this day, like a reminder of where I knew I could have taken it if I didn't leave. Like I knew I was playing at a high level, and I saw, again, I've seen the ups and downs of that sport from my perspective and from other people I know, but to know like, hey, I got a chance to play against one of the biggest names in the world was a pretty cool moment.
So where was Jack at the time?
He was at Aston Villa. It was the season before, it was the season that Aston Villa got promoted, and the season that he got his big move to Man City.
100 million or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a big move.
So were you marking the £100 million man?
Yeah, we did well. We drew the 1-1. It was a good game. But
he would have been playing. Was he playing out wide or up front, up against you?
Yeah.
So you got a few one-on-ones with him.
I dragged him down one time. Yeah.
I touched him.
I dragged him down. Yeah, he's good though. He's a good player.
Class, mate. Oh, that's great. But okay, let's go back to right. So the fears crept in. Straight back to New York?
Straight back to New York. At that point, didn't have a job, but I was just essentially, okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to get a job. And I didn't go back to my old employer or that industry. I was working more, like my first job was in more advertising. And then I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to go back and get a job, like where do I really want to work? Like what are some companies that I admire that I could see myself actually working for? Then I kind of identified Amex, American Express, was one of those companies that I thought would be a good option, like premium products, like, you know, great stability, good pay, strong trajectory. Those are like the criteria I was looking for. And I said, okay, I'm going to knock on the door until I get in there. Like, I'm not just going to take a job. I said, like, Amex is going to be the company I'm going to work for. And I just knocked on the door. Again, it was a case of a lot of persistence. They looked at my resume and they thought, okay, this guy hasn't worked in a year and a half, coming from professional soccer, doesn't have a lot of skills necessary we're looking for. And I said, no. Like, yes, I mean, like I do have skills and I do want to work here. And it was a case of 6 months of knocking on the door until I got my first chance. And then I got an interview and I took the interview and then found my way into the company.
So what was the job initially?
It's just an analyst job, which is like an entry level. It was just essentially a marketing analyst.
So what does a marketing analyst at Amex do?
A lot of Amex is a huge marketing machine, right? With marketing like credit cards and all that. So it's a lot of like the admin of doing that, like setting up a campaign and doing a lot of I don't want to say the grunt work, but not the exciting. It would be like if someone designs the ad and it's like, okay, now set this up. There's a lot of the grunt work behind it.
So when you're at that stage of your career, then Ned, like what did a typical week look like? Like were you working long hours?
Yeah, I worked long hours. I kind of got in this mindset where I was now 23 years old, maybe 23, 24. I came back and I was like, okay, I'm a little bit behind the curve here. People have had now a year or two head start. I'm starting an entry-level job. And I was really struggling with that decision to walk away from soccer because a lot of my friends, a lot of my teammates were now getting big contracts and they were getting big summer moves. And I had to watch those headlines knowing that like, hey, that could have been me. So my way of over-indexing was to put my entire life into my job. And I said, like, I couldn't watch soccer for years after that. Because it really scarred me of like seeing other people get those big moves when I know it could have been me if I didn't walk away. So I said, okay, my entire life, no social life. I'm going to just work incredibly hard at my job to try to get as far as possible in the quickest amount of time. So yeah, like 60-hour weeks, just all into my job to climb the ladder quickly. And I did. Like it paid off, but that was my life for like 6 to 8 years.
And obviously you've come from that sporting background now where you're training probably 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
When you were sort of working those long hours for Amex, did you still find time to train, run, keep fit? For
the first couple of years, yes, because I was at like an analyst, then a senior analyst, then a manager level job. So it wasn't, I put a lot of energy into those jobs, but I still was at a level that I could still balance it. And I was young enough where I could still make it work. So yeah, for the first couple of years, I wasn't obviously soccer fit, but I was able to keep a pretty fit physique. And I probably was I would say pretty fit until like 2022, when I started to get to levels that required more energy at the office.
Okay. And I'm always interested, like young professionals in New York. In my head, it's quite like romanticized.
Yeah.
Like, what do you get up to as like a young professional at the weekends in New York?
For me, nothing. For most people, it would be burning steam at the bars, socializing. New York's a very like work hard, play hard culture. So you work really hard, like whether you're in investment banking, Monday through Friday, and then it's expensive restaurants, expensive cocktail bars, spend all your money on the weekends, and then endless cycle. I never wanted that. That was never a life I was interested in.
Why not?
I've just never been I would say I definitely drank and socialized in college, but I never felt like that was something I wanted to do. It was more so something I did because everyone else did it. And I got to a point when I was 22, coming out of college, where I started to have that independence of like, you know what, I don't want to do that. And like, I'm not going to go out to the bar because I don't want to. And I found that really hard about New York is, I think you can find your circle anywhere, but I found I was definitely going against the grain by not wanting to do that, which again, it was like I had now Saturday, Sunday open, which then I took that time and put it back into my job. So it was like, just get ahead while everyone else is partying or drinking or socializing. I'm just going to put more energy into my job, which is going to get me ahead even faster. And it was just this endless cycle of chasing the carrot. But I had really no balance to my life for 6 years.
See, when you're doing that, like you're putting in 60-hour weeks, you're working on your weekends as well. You're going to be reporting into someone within Amex. You're going to have you're going to be part of a team. People are going to notice you're working these long hours, and they're going to notice that, hey, you're sending emails on a Saturday and Sunday. Did no one in Amex ever come to you and say, hey, Ned, like, is everything okay? Or, hey, Ned, I think you should, maybe take your foot off the gas a little bit, like you're going to burn out?
I definitely had that. Yeah, like there was never a pressure from the company to work those hours. It's actually an incredibly balanced place of work that really respects that, which I've always liked about the company. It was just something that, again, my manager would say, "Oh, don't send me emails on the weekends," and it was like, "Well, I'm just going to do it anyway." And I think they started to recognize that just who I was, and they weren't going to slow me down. And I think once they started to, they stopped fighting it. They're like, "This guy just wants to work. Like, let's let him work. Like, he's super ambitious, super motivated." And I think that actually they didn't try to fight it. They said, "This is someone we should really watch. Is someone who has a lot of potential, and let's support him. Like, because he clearly is working hard. He's clearly good at what he does." And I think that's what led, obviously, to a lot of the opportunities I had. Because, if it was me or someone else, they were going to give me the job because they knew I was going to work really hard.
And it's interesting in the corporate world, when someone demonstrates those behaviors, where they're trending toward burnout, you get well paid for it. You get well rewarded for it. You get a good salary.
Yeah. Salary
keeps going up. Bonuses keep going up as well. So you're in that cycle.
Yeah.
Right. When let's talk about that. So how long were you at Amex for?
6 years.
Let's talk about that final year. In the lead up to you leaving.
Yeah.
Like, what did that look like? What was going on then?
So I had a couple promotions over those years. Like, I went analyst, senior analyst, manager, senior manager, and directors at like that corner office job that everyone's chasing. And it usually takes 10, 15 years to get there. Some people never get there. And I managed to do it in 5. So I got to this like director level job in chasing. And I remember like I worked so hard to get it. And I eventually got it. I remember sitting in there in the first week, like corner of the office.
View of Manhattan?
View of Manhattan. Wow. And I just thought to myself, this isn't it. Like I'd been so focused on getting to that level for 6 years, and I got there and I just had this moment of like my world just eventually coming to, like I had suppressed those emotions for so long, and then I got to the top of the mountain to just not like the view, right? And I had that moment of like, I knew I needed to make a change. And I think I started to recognize that I was on a path I really wasn't enjoying. And once that, the whispers started to creep in, and they just got louder and louder and louder every day. And I think for that final year, they just continued to get louder, where I was going into work and I was just really unhappy, and I had to put on a mask and obviously show this this side of me that people couldn't see, but behind that I was just really miserable.
What were the whispers saying?
I think the whispers were saying, I knew I was capable of more. I knew I wanted more. And I just looked around the room and I saw a life I didn't want. Like, I was now in, just boardrooms with people that 10, 20 years ahead of me, that I'm like, that's me in 20 years if I stay on this path. And nothing against any of those people. It just wasn't a future that I wanted. Like, this idea of, not seeing your kids, not being able to take care of your health, like always chasing the next thing. And I just didn't want that life. And then once I saw it in front of me, that's when I just really struggled with the idea of continuing down that path. And I knew at some point I had to get off it.
You said there you wanted more, or you were sort of thought that you were sort of destined for more. At that stage, did you know what more looked like?
No.
It was just a feeling.
That was what was really hard, is I knew I wasn't on the right path, but I didn't know what the other path was. So it was this scary spot of being in a place that you knew wasn't right, but also not having the awareness to say, well, where else should I go? And I was just really stuck there for a long time. And it was a tough place to be trapped.
I can imagine working those long hours and over the weekend with this internal chatter and this sort of internal dilemma that you're facing as well. I can imagine that was probably quite a lonely place, Ned.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was lonely because, again, I always struggled. Like, I didn't have a lot of friends in New York, and I, to my own detriment, didn't invest in a lot of time. So, like, I wasn't socializing. I wasn't putting myself in environments to actually meet a lot of people because I was so focused on my job. And I had some great friends at work, which were some really nice people that I've kept in touch with. But for the most part, it was a lot of lonely time thinking, is this really what I want to do? I know this isn't what I want to do, but not having the courage to step off it because, again, director level job, Amex, like well ahead of the curve. To walk away from that was a really scary thought. And just the reaction of doing something like that also was terrifying, especially at 30, and this idea of starting over. And there were just so many things that were conflicting, but at the back of my head, it was like, you have to change. This is not your life.
Yeah. Are you a small business or solo entrepreneur who wishes you had more hours in the day? Have you ever thought about hiring a virtual assistant? Well, the Bondi podcast is sponsored by Remote-E. Remote-E specialize in connecting small businesses and entrepreneurs with the best virtual assistant talent in the Philippines to do all those jobs that you don't want to, so you can focus on growing and scaling your business. If this is something you're interested in, the Bondi podcast can get you 2 weeks absolutely free with Remote-E. Just go to the website, remote-e.com.au/contact and enter the referral code Bondi for 2 weeks absolutely free. That's 2 weeks absolutely free. Cheers. You had the golden handcuffs on as well, because you're probably at a point where you're on a really good salary, which is, it's hard to walk away from.
Yeah.
There's a lot of security and safety and comes with that salary, but if you're battling that sort of inner turmoil as well, that comes at a cost.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a dangerous part of my life where you had just two voices in your head battling all day.
Yeah. And you can't really tell anyone, because if you tell a friend, they'll be like, what are you talking about, mate? You've got such a sweet life. Like,
Yeah.
Let's talk about the path. You'll not be the only person who's ever got on the path and at the age of 30 thought, fuck. A lot of people stay on the path, can end up quite unhappy. Why do you think, this is more like a broader question about society, why do you think we're pushed onto the path, and why do you think people don't get off it?
I think society programs us to think there's often just one way to make a living, especially in America. It's you work a 9 to 5, you work hard, you climb the ladder. It's like the American dream. You eventually move to the suburbs, you get a white picket fence, you get married, you have 2 kids, like you get a dog. Like this idea of doing something else is not universally accepted in society. And I don't think we're given enough freedom to try things. And I think it's a case of like 22, if you're not in the seat in an office in New York, you're behind. So people get trapped in this world of living in fear, where if you do anything but that, you're almost outcasted and you're questioned for your decisions. And I think a lot of people get on the path not really knowing what they want to do with their life. So they just get on the path that everyone else is on. And over time, they start to recognize, I don't know if this is actually what I want to do, but I'm so deep in it now that I can't turn around. And the second you start to add variables like a partner or a kid or a family, like you can't turn around because now you have responsibility. And I think people get so far down the path, they finally recognize probably in their 30s that this isn't what I want to do, but I don't have another choice, or I'm too scared to go start over because of the social pressure that comes with that. And they just live with that. They live with that for the rest of their life.
How did you eventually overcome it, Ned, to the point where you handed in your resignation?
I hit rock bottom.
What did that look like?
I got to a point that was really hard to get on the subway and going to work. Like, there's a famous Tony Robbins quote, change happens when the fear of staying the same outweighs the fear of change. Something like that. I think I got that right. But that was playing in my head a lot. And I got to a point where I said, you know what? I'm so unhappy doing what I'm doing right now that anything is better than this. And I had never experienced that before. I've obviously experienced a lot of low points over the course of my 20s, dating back to even my journey with soccer. But I just got to a point that, I don't know, my emotions were so strong, and I had just turned 30, and I said, you know what, like I have to rip the Band-Aid off. I can't do this anymore. And yeah, it was a clashing of like all these things coming together, but I knew at some point like I had to do it, and I just made the decision one day and I just went for it.
Tell me about how you actually went about it.
I had just turned 30, so my birthday was in April, just turned 30. I actually ended up going down to like, there's so many emotions in my head at that point. I ended up booking a trip to Miami just to get some warm weather and sit on the beach, like in solitude. And I went down there for like 3 days.
By yourself?
By myself,
Nice.
Turned 30. And I remember just sitting there on the beach, like I was like, this is the right decision, I have to go. Flew back to New York, and it was that week that it was like kaput. Left the company, and
email, letter, face to face.
Yeah, face to face, and it was a case of just immediately, because I was also not such a high profile job that like it was a case of like decision, okay, like separate ways, like thank you for your time.
Straight away?
Same day.
Wow, so there was no like notice period?
No, because in my job, like I had access, like I was a director. Oh. I had too much information at my disposal.
Right.
It was a case of like decision made. Okay, great. Like we close out today.
So gardening leave or just done? No more. Do you know what gardening leave is? It's
no,
like when gardening leave is when someone in a high profile position like yourself, with access to like sensitive information, they have. It's when they hand in their resignation, and they're entitled to work their notice period, which is like 2 or 3 months. But because they're in this privileged position where they have access to all this sensitive information, they get put on gardening leave, which is like you're not working for the company anymore, but you get paid out for your notice period.
Yeah, I got paid out.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I got paid out.
Nice, that's the dream though.
I was pretty scared at that point, but at least I was getting paid. But yeah, essentially, yeah. At least I didn't have to work, but I still was paid for a little bit. Yeah.
Did you give them a reason? Did you tell them why?
No, which was because I was at that point I knew which we'll get into. I knew I was going to go the social media route, and I had a lot of shame about that. Of like telling my, my VP, oh, I'm going to quit this job to post on social media. Like that to me was a frightening thought. So I just was like, look, I want to do something else. Like this has nothing to do with this job or you or this company. Like I really enjoyed my time here, but I want to do something else in my life. And I kept it very vague, but I made it clear, like, this is just, it's not me going to Chase or Capital One or a competitor, which I think is a little bit of a dodgy subject when you leave a company like Amex. It was a case of like, look, I just want to do something else in my life. And I think there was some mutual respect there of like, okay, yeah, like I don't want to be here if you're not happy. But then there was also a case of like, immediately, okay, now I have to figure out who's going to replace you, like, because now I need someone in the seat.
Yeah, right.
So it was a little bit of that.
Did they try and counter you? Did they try and talk you around, or was it just?
I think they know. Like, it was funny because a couple weeks before, like I was really good at hiding my emotion, and nobody would have guessed that I was unhappy. But there were a couple times that I started to like, I think noticeably just the way I carried myself around the office was like clearly down. And my boss asked me, was like, what's going on? Like, you're not, like, it doesn't look like you're very happy. And she confronted me at one point. So I think she started to recognize probably the month prior that I was really struggling and I wasn't enjoying it. So it wasn't actually a surprise, I don't think. I think it was a case of like the ticking time bomb that they probably knew was coming.
Was it unhappiness, Ned, or was it like something stronger and a bit more serious in terms of your mental health?
How would you define that? Like, what do you mean?
Well, you said earlier that you struggled to get on the subway to go to work. I'm trying to think, is it veering into depression or is it just down? I don't really know the difference between the two, but I'm just trying to gauge how serious it was.
It was pretty, like, I think if I've ever defined a period in my life as being depressed, I think it would have been that. I know like the weight of that term can carry a lot, so that's why I'm hesitant to use it, but I would say I definitely felt periods of depression at that point in my life, and that I'd never felt before. Like we've all had low points. I myself had many low points over that decade, but at that point I had never been that low before. Again, yeah, waking up in the morning, just not wanting to get out of bed is kind of where I got to.
How did you feel after quitting? Like that night, do you remember that feeling?
I remember it actually. I had a huge sense of relief. I remember it like it was yesterday. So it happened, and I remember taking a walk. So like it was on a Friday. And I remember once like all my stuff got essentially like removed, like access, like all my like confidential, like you just saw it come off your phone, which was crazy. It was just like Microsoft Outlook stripped off your phone. I went on a walk around the block, just like no music, just like a 30-minute walk in New York around the block. And I felt so relieved. It was crazy. I felt like I was holding so much emotion for so long. And then it was all of a sudden like, okay, well now you're gone. Like you've done it. And now like returning the page, new chapter. And yeah, I felt a huge amount of relief. I thought I would be more scared, but I actually was at a point was like, all right, like now it's time.
So relief was like the overwhelming feeling at the time?
Yeah. Wow. It was really for the first couple hours for sure.
And what thoughts were coming up?
So at that point, nobody knew. I didn't tell my parents, didn't tell my friends, didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew except for me. Because again, I didn't like that. I had carried a lot of shame of that decision of telling people what I was about to do, even though I knew I wanted to do it. So yeah, it was just me and my thoughts and thinking, okay, well, what's next? And starting to try to figure out the pieces of what I was going to do, but keeping that very much internalized where I get a call from the parents. It was, oh, how's work? And it's, oh, work was great. And like, yeah, job's going great. Still working hard. Like nobody had a clue. And I was just internalizing that and thinking, yeah, what was it going to do, and starting to plan.
So you mentioned social media. And you mentioned you knew that you were going to start posting on social media before you resigned, left Amex. Why social media? Like what made you think, right, this is going to be the next thing that I'm going to start doing? How did you get on that path?
Yeah, so it was a case of like almost elimination of when I was evaluating the options, right? So I was corner office job at Amex, and I thought to myself, if I'm not happy here, I'm not going to be happy anywhere in a corporate job. And I knew that very clearly. Like Amex, amazing company. I had great job, like great people around me, great benefits. Like I knew it wasn't a case of like going to Chase and being happier. It was a case of corporate was just not meant for me, even though I was good at it. Then it was, okay, well, what do I like? And I thought to myself, I really like health and fitness. I had a background in soccer. Like, what can I do maybe in health and fitness? But I thought, well, I don't want to go work at a gym and like be a PT. But I was like, I still like health and fitness. So I started to kind of like figure out, well, what can I do? And then I kept just seeing people on social media. Like I was just getting berated every day with like people making like life-changing moves by posting videos. So it was a little bit of like, well, I like health and fitness. I don't like social media necessarily, but I know it's a vehicle to get me a life that I was really looking for, which was freedom, control of my time, like control of my finances, like really just owning my life. So it was a little bit of like, I don't know how it works, but I'm going to figure out the way to pair those together and see where it takes me.
So what was the plan from that point? So you figured out, right, I'm going to start posting on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't, looking back, like even when I look at my camera roll, I'm like, wow, it's so clueless. I didn't have a real plan, but my lease was ending in New York in August, and I now had no income because I wasn't working yet. I didn't have a job. So it was a case of like, I had a little bit of money, very little, but I had some savings, and a guy was like, okay, I'll let my lease run out. I'll start posting. I started posting in August of 2024. And it was a case of just, I never posted online. So I didn't know this idea of like content creation and what to post and like strategy. It was a case of just, I was posting my workouts and I was posting what I was eating. Like it was just sharing things that I was doing at the time.
On your existing Instagram account?
Yeah. So yeah, it's on my Ned Wagner account. So I had 300 or 400 followers.
Just friends and family. Yeah.
I didn't know like start a new account, like use my existing one, but I thought to myself, well, I have 400 followers. Why not just take the head start, like versus zero? And getting over that like feeling of putting yourself out there was really hard. But again, I was at such a low point that I was like, who cares? I'm going to put it out there. And yeah, I just started posting. And the only rule that I told myself was I'll post every day for a year. That was all I said. I was like, no matter what happens, no matter who gets in your way, no matter who makes fun of you, you're going to put out a post every day for a year.
And you made that commitment to yourself in August 2024, yes. So just over a year ago.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me, so you started posting in New York?
Started posting in New York.
Ned, at this point in time, did you have any idea how this was going to lead to generating an income, or was...
No.
Okay.
I knew there was a way to make money online. I knew that if I built enough of an audience, there would be some way I could connect the dots. And I knew I was smart enough to figure it out. I didn't obviously have the answers at that point, but I told myself, I've figured things out before. I've landed in London and landed a pro contract just off grit. I'm like, I can do the same thing with social media. A little bit of blind like delusion, but I started posting in August, and I knew my lease was running out, and that was ultimately my decision to go to Mexico.
So the goal at this point of your posting on social media journey, the goal was just growth, numbers, followers.
Yeah.
Try and put out something that sticks, grow the followers, and then we'll figure out the money side of it later.
Exactly.
Okay, so bridge the gap for me from New York. Actually, before we do that, let's talk about, when did you tell your friends and family that you quit Amex, and what did they say?
Yeah, that was a tough one. I told my so my friends found out through social media. They found out through the first post. My family I had told about a couple days before. I didn't tell them what I was necessarily doing. I told my parents, I left Amex. I think I said, yeah, I'm gonna start posting on social media, and I want to maybe do like fitness coaching. I think I told them something like very generic to say I had a plan. Didn't really have a plan, but I wanted them to feel like I had a plan. And it was a case of that, yeah. I got a lot of questions though. My parents were, I would say, I don't know, if your kid leaves a corner office job at Amex to start posting videos, I can imagine how that would feel for them, especially when they don't understand the space and the opportunity that you can create. So for them, there was a disconnect of, I don't know what this guy's doing, but I think they also recognized that I was at a point that I clearly made the decision. So I think they understood like, hey, he's made this decision for a reason, and he was clearly unhappy, because why would you leave a director level job at Amex? So I think those two worlds, they were trying to find a way to see it, but they didn't really see it, and it did cause a little bit of friction.
Did they try and change your minds, or
they didn't try to change my mind and say go back to Amex, but they definitely questioned what I was doing. They questioned, is this the right path? Like, they definitely had a little bit of, well, maybe it was Amex, and maybe you'd be happier somewhere else, and maybe you should go try something else. Like, they were definitely trying to push me away from doing it. And then certainly Mexico. They were definitely opposed to Mexico.
And what about friends? I can understand that with parents who don't necessarily understand the power of social media and the opportunities that can potentially come along with it.
Yeah.
What about friends, people your own age who are in that social media generation, who are more familiar with the platforms? What were they saying?
There's probably two different answers. Behind my back, probably a lot of laughter and criticism. To my face, maybe a little bit of blind support, or maybe inauthentic support, whatever I want to categorize it as. I think people just didn't. I think like my close friends were saying like, "Oh, that's great," but like didn't maybe really know where it was going to go, and it was a little bit of like, "Oh, cool, that's good for you, man."
It's just
like,
a phase.
Yeah, just a phase. Like you'll be back. I think a lot of my people from Amex were. I think there was a lot of chatter of, "Wow, look what Ned's doing. Like he left that job for posting." I think there was a lot of that. So it was definitely me against me, just in my own world, trying to block out the noise, and I cut off everyone, like truly everyone. I remember talking to my parents, and it was a tough decision, but I said, I remember having a conversation with them and said, look, this is what I'm going to do. I don't know where it's going to take me, but this is what I want to do. And I was very clear. I was like, I would love if you guys will support me emotionally. If you do, great. If you don't, I'm doing it anyway. And we won't communicate. That was like how bullish I was on doing this. And I think they recognized that in my voice was like, okay, we've got to like try to find a way to support him. Otherwise we're going to lose him and we're going to have no contact with our son. And again, it was definitely a little bit of friction for the first couple months while I was figuring out, but my way of internalizing with that was just cutting everyone off from me and being in my own world.
So how did those early days of posting in New York go before you moved to Mexico? Scary.
scary for sure. At that point, again, when I get focused on a path, whether it was soccer or whether it was Amex or whether it was social, I go laser focused and I just kind of cut off everything, and that's probably to my own detriment. But just the way I've always been programmed. So I got to a point where I was like, well, okay, every day for a year, nothing's getting in the way of me. Like, I'm doing this. So at first it was just a case of, like, I wasn't expecting to be good or see success, but I said, once I start, I'm not going to stop. And no matter who was barking in my ear, it was a case of like, I don't care. I'm doing this.
Bondi podcast listeners, this episode is sponsored by Chief Nutrition. Chief Nutrition specialize in healthy, nutritious snacks that cut the crap. My personal favorite is the collagen protein bar, which I have every day. And good news, Bondi podcast listeners get 10% off all Chief Nutrition products when they order online. And we've got a discount code for you right there in the show notes. So go and use that. Go and check out the website and let me know what you think. Cheers. And did the followers tick up while you were in New York?
No.
Tell me about that.
It took me 3 months of posting to get to 500 followers.
To add 100 followers.
I think it was like a couple hundred. Yeah.
Wow.
It was grind. Yeah. I think that was where I made a mistake, is like I would have started fresh, but I had this account for 10 years, never used it. So it was like probably stale and dark in the world of Meta. And all of a sudden I posted. So like, I don't know, it just took a while for me to warm up, but the thought of posting for 90 days and getting no traction, if I look back at it, I'm like, wow, I must have been really, really focused.
So this is the concept of, if you want to go down this journey, you're better starting a new account from scratch?
Depends on where you're starting from.
Yeah. But if you're starting from a low number like yourself.
Yeah, if you're starting from a low number and you've got majority of people are acquaintances that maybe don't fully support you or haven't signed up for what you're about to post, and you haven't used the account for a while, then I would recommend just starting fresh. I think there's a social liberation of just starting a fresh account, because everyone who follows you is intentionally following you, versus if you start with 300 people who didn't sign up for your fitness pursuit, like, you're just hurting yourself because they're not going to engage with your content. Yeah,
fair enough. So tell me about the move to Mexico. What was the thinking there?
Yeah. Big part of my story was to Mexico. The decision was, I had a certain amount of money and didn't have a lot of support. And I knew it was a case of, this wasn't going to happen overnight. I needed to figure out, how do I stretch my runway as long as possible? And where could I do that? The States is expensive. So it was a case of, obviously I had to leave New York. And I was like, well, could I live somewhere cheaper? Yes. But then I thought to myself, well, nobody's really supportive of me. And I wouldn't say like content creation is that accepted in the States, or really anywhere, to be honest. But this idea of pulling on a camera was really like, I had a lot of shame around that. So I thought, well, where can I do that that's like not anywhere near people? I was like, Mexico. It was like cheap to live, nobody's around me, nice weather. I thought to myself, let's just get away from the world.
Did you know that there were content creators down in Mexico doing?
Didn't know anybody.
Right. Okay.
No, it was a case of like Mexico, Airbnb.com, like cheap place to live. And it was a case of, okay, Tulum, Mexico. I had been there once, like a couple of years before, and I remember it just being very empty and quiet, and just, it's not like a Cancun or Playa del Carmen, which is very, very developed. Tulum's like very much like middle of nowhere. So I thought to myself, okay, it's cheap, it's nice weather, I can get away from the world. Why not Tulum? And I just booked a one-way ticket. Again, flew down there. Didn't know a single person, didn't speak Spanish. Truly just landed there with my bag. And I was like, welcome.
What do those early days in Tulum look like? Did you find a place to live?
Yeah, I found a place to live. It was just, it was $1,000 a month. Like, just the cheapest place I could find on Airbnb. It was, again, I've spent so much time over the years just with myself and my own thoughts that I've found a really good way of just internalizing things. Most of my 20s were by myself, whether it was like professional soccer or it was my job at Amex, and then it was this. It was just, I've always been just on my own, listening to my own thoughts. So I could handle it pretty well, but it was definitely lonely in the sense that there was truly just nobody around me at that point. It was just me, my laptop, and my iPhone trying to create this like brand through social media and this business, not really knowing what I was doing and having this delusion that it was eventually going to pay off. And it wasn't happening at the speed that I wanted. But again, it was that thought of going back to New York and showing up with my bags and then everyone saying, "Told you so," was a pretty strong driver for me to say, like, don't give up.
That what do they call that, sort of like negative reinforcement?
Yeah.
It can be quite a powerful driver for getting shit done.
Yeah.
So like when you arrived down in Tulum with your bag and your camera ready to go, no other job to support you at this stage, Ned, just the savings that you had.
Mm-hmm.
How much did you have in your bank account at the time?
I think I had $8,000 to my name.
And it's $1,000 a month on rent.
Yeah, but then food
plus living expenses, right? So you get down to Mexico, you continue posting on social media. Did the followers start to grow from that point?
Yeah, there was one day that it just exploded.
What happened on that day?
One of my videos took off and it went for like 1 million views or something. So I went from, I got up to 1,000 and then I went to like 5,000 in a week. And then I went to 20,000 in a month. So
all off that one video?
That one video drove a lot of traffic, but then it's like high tide rises all boats. There were other videos that started to perform, but I would say that one definitely brought me up like a couple levels.
What was special about that reel?
Nothing was special about it. Like the video or the feeling?
No, that reel that did well.
It was surprising because it was one that I was putting out there that I was like, this is going to be terrible. And it was the one that actually moved the needle.
And what was it? Was it like a day in the life, or?
It was exercises in the gym. It was like exercises for runners. Like it was like a case of like I was just running with a 0.5 lens, and it was just a like on the beat drop, goes through a couple exercises, and that was it. It's like 10-second reel.
Right. And if you critically analyze that reel, looking back now, like why do you think it did so well, or do you not really have an explanation for it?
I think the music and the pacing was a big reason where I think the sequencing of the exercises happened fairly quick and they were unconventional exercises. So it required people to rewatch the video. And I think that looping helped create some of the engagement. And yeah, it was just a case of like immediate, 1,000 to 5,000 to 20,000 a month. And it was just, whoa, like what just happened? Like phone notifications all day long. And it was the first time that I got real fuel that I started to recognize like this was possible. Again, I didn't know the business. I didn't have any clue what it was going, but I was like, we're going somewhere. I don't know where it is, but we're going up.
How did that feel?
It felt good, but I was still very nervous because, again, the finances weren't coming in. So I had this feeling of, okay, we're doing something right because the account is growing. But I also recognized the bank account was quickly going to zero. And it was these like two different emotions of happiness in the sense that something was working, but also fear in the sense that like the runway was quickly ending.
Right. So how did you start to generate an income?
Desperation. I thought to myself it would be easier than it was. This is where like, again, the business side of social media is a skill set. And I had this corporate experience. It obviously was somewhat smart in terms of the business world, but doesn't translate to social media in terms of at least like the tactics. I think macro level it does, but in terms of like actually how to set things up and do something, no clue. I started to think, okay, well, I've been posting about like training content and nutrition content. People clearly want to know what I'm eating or how I'm training. So I thought, well, low ticket training program, like $27, like I'll put something together, like 12-week program, and I'll sell that. And I thought to myself, okay, 20,000 followers. If like 1% of those buy, if I charge it $27, like I'm going to make X amount. I was like, smooth sailing. We're chilling.
Yeah.
Obviously didn't play out that way. But yeah, I built out a Shopify store. I spent like weeks on this program, made it all beautiful, and then launched it. And yeah, I never made over $1,000 a month selling it. Like nice. I made like nothing, and then it was a case of drive more traffic, and it was just, yeah, it's a case of just constant struggle. But I never paid my rent with my salary. It was always in the negative.
Right. So it was training and nutrition program, low ticket item, hoping that 1% to 2% of the followers buy it, purchase it per month to sort of at least sustain you for the time being. Just on that, Ned, you don't have any qualifications in training or nutrition?
I did get a PT cert 3 years prior.
Ah, right, okay.
It expired, so technically it wasn't active at the time, but I did go through the process of getting certified one time because this was like, I think halfway through my time at Amex where I was starting to like get whispers of, do I actually want to do this? I got the PT cert just in case I wanted to get maybe I wanted to like do some personal training. And I quickly realized, no, I actually don't want to do that, but I got the cert.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. But nothing on the nutrition side?
No, nothing on the nutrition side.
Okay. Do you reflect on that and go, because I know there are some people that sell these type of programs out there and they don't have qualifications, but they're selling these sort of programs to their audience, to their followers. Do you think there's any dangers in that at all?
I think it depends on how you market it, for sure. I always positioned it as like, this is how I eat. Right? Yeah. It wasn't, you must eat this way, which I think is a dangerous game to play. So it was a case of, here's how I train, here's how I eat. And people were drawn to that. And I got a lot of questions of people saying, well, what do you eat? And what do you train? How do you look a certain way? So that was my way of giving them that solution. But I'm in no way an expert in nutrition, nor would I claim to be. And I think that was where I had to walk that delicate line of just not telling people to eat a certain way because I'm not educated in that field.
Yeah. Was there any sort of thoughts in the back of your head? Should I be doing this? Or was it just, no, if I position it this way and I'm clear about positioning it this way, it's okay?
I generally felt okay with it because of the way I positioned it.
Okay.
I was never telling someone how to eat. And I also knew that eventually it wasn't something I was going to do long term.
Yeah.
I saw it as like, an opportunity to create a business until I actually figured out what the business was. So I didn't see a huge problem with it, but I was definitely careful with the way that I spoke about nutrition to not come across as a self-claimed guru, which I wasn't.
Yeah, fair enough. So when you started selling these programs, were you earning enough to get by or running out of money still?
Yeah.
Just at a slower rate?
Yeah, it's basically like the tap was like a little bit less, wasn't flowing as strong. But I think I started monetizing in October. October and November were very slow. It was like a case of $100 maybe, then like $200. And then December, as my audience continued to grow, I had gotten to about 40,000 followers at that point. So just more traffic, but the conversions weren't coming through on the back end. And that was the month of December was my biggest month, which was, I think, like $890 total. So I never cleared 1,000 low ticket. And at that point, from August to December, when I had the 8,000, like quickly just depleted. I had very little left to my name at that point. I think I had like $2,000 or something like that.
So what are you thinking at this stage?
I, for the first time, started to get nervous. I always thought from August, September, October, I was like, it's gonna work out eventually. Like it has to. And I think December was the first time I really started to get nervous about the outcome. And on top of that, the holidays were coming up. So I was going to go home to see family for the first time since I left. And that was a very scary feeling because I hadn't figured it out. The business wasn't working. I wasn't making any money. I was losing money. I was almost out of money. And that idea of like showing up to my house, seeing family, very celebratory environment, but being in a really dark place, it was really scary. And again, it was a case of I had to put on the mask again. I got home and, you know, to the outside world, you know, they're like, oh, 40,000 followers, you must be crushing it. And internally I was like, no, I like can't figure anything out here. And that feeling of being in an environment that's very celebratory. My siblings are all in corporate jobs and they're on paid time off and they're, you know, very successful. And I'm just 30 years old, like can't figure anything out. It was a hard environment to be in. And my head was back in Mexico. My body was in California with family, but it was a really tough time to be around family.
You said there, Ned, about going back to your family for the holidays and having to put a mask on. I imagine at that time as well, in Mexico, for the reels that you're posting at that time as well, you probably having to put a bit of a mask on as well, because you're not going to be posting your shit with.
Yeah.
Did you have to sort of put a mask on to record some of the content at that point in time as well?
Yeah, because it never had, people didn't know what my finances were like, nor did I feel comfortable sharing that. So it was definitely a little bit of a facade of, you know, sharing my training, sharing my nutrition, like sharing my life down there, but not really showing the behind the scenes of what I was feeling in the business. So there was definitely a shield over how I was truly feeling, both in my content and when I ultimately, you know, crossed paths with my family again and not giving them the full picture of where I was at.
How prevalent do you think that is across content creators?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I would imagine it's content, right? It's a highlight reel. I think a lot of people probably put on, you know, it's a very curated feed where people are putting on a facade that might not be that real. But it's hard for me to know what someone else is going through or who is showing the real version of themselves, because I don't know. Nobody knows. All I know is that, like, where I was at, for sure, it wasn't, what was seen online was very different from what I was feeling internally. And it was a pretty tough battle to face.
Yeah, it is a tough gig, content creation. I sort of dabbled a little bit with it earlier this year, sort of outside of the podcast stuff, sort of delved into the personal brand stuff as well. Doing the podcast, the personal brand stuff, and my 9 to 5, it just got too much for me. I was very overwhelmed. I lasted 3 weeks of posting every day. I reckon if I didn't have the podcast, I would have the time to commit to it. But from that, even just that 3-week period, it's a tough gig.
Yeah.
I get a lot of content creators on the podcast, and I always ask them this question. Like we always talk about this. It's a lot harder than it actually looks. People who aren't content creators, it is time consuming and stressful and everything. And I think a lot of people who maybe are in corporate maybe romanticize the life of the content creator a little bit without really knowing what you've got to give to make it work.
Yeah. I totally agree.
So how close were you, Ned, to, did you ever think about quitting or going back to New York?
I never thought about quitting. It was always, what can I do to keep this going? And I was there with my family for Christmas and for New Year's, and I flew back to New York to Tulum on the 1st of January. And I knew January was going to be an important month for me because I had forecasted the days I had left. And at that point, I was officially out of money, like complete bank account zero, now relying on credit cards to survive. So it was a case of, I was never going to go back to New York. I was never going to go back to my corporate job. it was a case of like, just how can I continue to pay the bills for this? Because at some point it will work. And it was just a little delusion. But I said like, you know, I'll do whatever I can to figure it out. And I guess wait for that rainy day to end, if you will.
So where's the turning point in this story, Ned? Like
a lot of
yeah.
It turned so I ended up investing in coaching.
So what did that look like?
$10,000.
Right.
Yeah. So I got to a point that I was bleeding really slow. I was like at the chips table, just bleeding. And I recognized I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like looking around and there were people that clearly were seeing success, not only in terms of obviously the growth, which I'd already seen, but more importantly, the business. And I thought to myself, well, there's clearly a business skill set here that I don't have. And I thought to myself, well, I'm out of money here. I'm going to be out of money pretty soon. And the only way that I'm going to see the success is if I invest and learn these skills. Again, I didn't have 10 grand in my name, but I thought to myself, well, I have to learn the skills. And I was like, if I learn the skills, I back myself to be able to figure it out. So I just ended up putting on a credit card. I went all in again and just said, sink or swim, time to work.
So who was your coach?
Alfie.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know Alfie offers the Amplify content like creation course, how to build a personal brand. There's a business aspect to that. 10 grand, is that a more sophisticated one-on-one?
Alfie 101.
Why did you go Alfie 101 rather than into the Amplify?
It's still part
course?
of it's the
high ticket, is it?
Yeah, there's different levels you can come in on. The program has changed a lot since that point, but it was essentially a case of I was aware of Alfie at that point and what he had built, and I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I want like the best level of coaching I can get. And I said, I'll throw everything at it. So yeah, I went all in.
Right. Do you remember that first call with Alfie?
Mm-hmm.
How did that go?
We laugh at it now because he was on the stationary bike at Virtus, so he was like not that switched on, which we laugh about now. But yeah, it was nice to put myself in. What he's built, has been incredible. I've always admired him from afar, and I knew he was going to be someone that could really help me. Like I had invested in coaches before that I didn't get the result that I really wanted.
Social media coaches, or
yeah, I invested in multiple over the course of that 6-month period with the money that that's what kind of led to the 8 grand like depleting so fast. As I was in Mexico, and outside of living expenses and rent and food, I was also like investing in coaching and courses and like trying to chip away at the problem, but ended up just depleting my bank account and actually not getting the result.
And why didn't you get the result with those other coaches and courses?
I think it's like anything. Like there's good programs and bad programs, and it wasn't necessarily to say that program wasn't good, but for whatever reason, it just didn't align with what. I think the struggle that I always had was the content that I put out there was always really important to me, and some of the coaches that I had invested in were like, you have to like niche down and post just styles of content I didn't resonate with, and that was really hard for me to back. As that,
like what?
Let's say like for like if you were a fitness coach, like controversial topics or really like thought-provoking hooks, or 8 exercises in the gym for biceps. Like I never wanted to go down that route because I knew long-term I didn't want to be a fitness coach. So it was just like this like tough paradox of like, I knew that's what they taught, but it wasn't something that I really wanted to create. And for that reason, I was never really that bought in. But that was after I obviously had paid for the program. So I eventually saw Alfie, and I'd been following for a little bit, and I saw what he created, and it was very different. It was very much content that I enjoyed creating, which was more lifestyle, more mindset. Like he was still selling a fitness offer, but he wasn't posting that type of content that everyone else taught. So I was like, well, he's really figured it out. I really resonate with his content, what he puts out in the world. That's the sort of content that I create. So he has to be the right coach for me. And that was sort of the decision that led me to like, okay, let's do it again. And let's just go all in. If it doesn't work out with him, then maybe it doesn't work out ever.
And had you made that deal with yourself at that point in time? Was that what you were thinking? Like, I'm taking 10 grand out of my credit card here, paying for a coach. If it doesn't work out, maybe
I don't think I even knew the consequences of that decision, because it is a scary one, like thinking of, well, what happens if I couldn't pay that off? I thought to myself, I came from the credit card world, so I thought to myself, well, I'll just carry the interest until the day I die, until I figured it out. I was like, at some point, I'm like, I'll pay 25% interest. At some point, I'll make the money to cover it. It was just this like weird feeling of I'll figure it out at some point. And definitely a little bit of, I wouldn't recommend the decision on anybody, but emotion's a strong driver. And I think I was at a point that I just knew, like, you've got to figure something out, Ned, or you're never going to make this work.
So what did you learn from Alpha, and what did you start doing differently?
Success happened very quickly. So I went from making less than $800. I made $28,000 in my first 6 weeks. So
the same $27 program?
Completely different offer. So I went from low ticket to high ticket. So I was doing low ticket digital products, quickly went into a high ticket coaching model where it was one-on-one, selling high ticket prices, and again, just appealing to a different buyer. But it was a case of quickly switching out my funnel, switching out all the back end, switching my offer, and then just marketing a different solution to ultimately a fitness driven audience. And just completely night and day switch, made more money than I had ever expected to see in a very short amount of time. And that's when I knew, okay, we've figured this out. Like, now we know this works.
Right. But now you've got rid of the low ticket.
Low ticket gone.
Switched to the high ticket.
Yeah.
But now you're doing the thing you said you didn't necessarily want to do, which is fitness coaching.
Exactly. So I was doing fitness coaching, and at the time I enjoyed it, but as I scaled the business, I started to recognize, okay, like at some point I need to get off this. And I'd always built my content around non-fitness stuff.
Concepts.
Like I was definitely showing running and I was showing some training, but it was definitely more like mindset, lifestyle driven, because that was sort of the content I enjoyed watching and I enjoyed creating. So I was selling a fitness offer, but I knew in the back of my mind I was going to take a step back from it at some point. But again, I hadn't created or generated enough credibility or authority in the space to sell something else. It was the only thing I knew at the time. So it was a case of, okay, we'll just continue to ride this wave to a point. And I rode it to 100,000 followers. That's when I made the switch.
And you're on about 40 or 50,000 followers.
Yeah.
And that's popped to 100,000 followers. So within the coaching with Alfie, outside of the business side of things, did you learn things about how to put your content out there that sort of helped with that pop as well?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to Amplify. There's obviously the social media side, and there is a business side.
Yeah.
I definitely came in with the business focus of like, I thought to myself, well, I've done the content, like I've grown the audience, so just give me the business help. But I ended up learning a lot in both. I think the business where I started, but then I realized there's actually a lot to content and what you put out there. It's not as just like put a video out there and it's equal. It's like the type of content you put out there is actually really important.
So what did you start doing differently with your content?
I think a big switch for me was showing more of what made me me and like being more authentic and real in my content. So I think for a long time it was trying to, again, curate like the perfect version of, the exact shot in the gym or the exact plate on your table. And it was just a very like, everything has to be polished. I got to a point that I was like, just take off the mask and like really start to show like who I am, the good, the bad, things I thought, things I was feeling, things I stand for, things I stand against. It was just the real version of me. And I think that when I started to be more open and real and raw is where I started to get a lot more people that were bought into who I was and like became almost like, it was like that transition from followers to fans where people were really like bought into my brand and that obviously translated to business success.
So what parts of yourself, Ned, were you hiding with your initial content before you made this switch?
I don't think people knew the chapter of like living in fear for a decade of following the path and doing what everyone else says is right for you and not having the courage to step off that. And I had never shared that at any point in my journey. And I think once I started to show that side of me of, just being more vulnerable and kind of sharing and reflecting on my journey through corporate and, the ups and downs, I think where people really got bought into me because I think there's a lot of people out there that could relate to that.
People probably stuck in corporate, still on that path, but afraid to take that step off.
Yeah.
They're maybe watching your content to get a little bit of inspiration, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of what led to the second business ultimately is, again, I knew I didn't want to be a fitness coach, but I also didn't have any credibility to sell anything else. So I knew in my head, well, I've got to build a business and this will be the business that I build for today. But your business today doesn't have to be your business tomorrow. And I recognized there was eventually going to be an exit point. I always thought in my mind, well, I have to get to 100K if I ever want to.
Sorry, 100K in revenue?
100K in followers.
Oh, right, okay.
My thought was I started to see some success in the business. And I started to realize, okay, this was possible. And in the back of my mind, I thought, I really want to help other people unlock this. I really thought to myself, there's someone else who's sitting in there in a job right now in New York who's miserable, but doesn't have the courage to do what I did, to be crazy and fly to Mexico and like quit everything. But I was like, I really want to help that person because I had that strong feeling of, I was talking to a previous version of myself, but I also recognized I didn't have the credibility to help that person because I hadn't built the thing yet. So it was a case of, okay, I've got to scale this coaching business as big as I can get it and get to a point that, hey, I've shown the world I can do this and I can now teach them how to do it and help them escape too. And that was really a strong driver for me. But I was patiently waiting for that time. I think the more that I shared about my story and leaving corporate, which nobody knew for probably the first 6 months. I'd never shared it because I was carrying all that shame. There were a lot of people that said, wait a second, like, I don't actually want the fitness coaching. How did you do this? How did you build this business? How are you like living this life like in Mexico or now traveling? And that's where I started to really think I have a completely different offer that I need to build.
So you shifted the offering from training and nutrition programs to how would you describe the offering now? Like, how would you describe the offering?
At first it was fitness coaching, and then I got some people start to reach out to me saying, I don't want the fitness coaching, I want the business coaching, the social media and the business coaching. Like, how did you leave New York? How did you, one, grow a following? How did you create a business? Like, how did you create this coaching business? How are you making money? So then I started to take on a couple of clients over here. So I had these 2 offers running in the background. And I was really enjoying helping these people more than these people. Like, it was a case of like, I got a lot of passion on these coaching calls, helping the person who was sitting like in a law firm in Stockholm. Like, I just had these experiences with clients who were amazing that I was like, wow, I really want to help this person escape. And it was a case of, I really wanted to help these person with fitness, but it's a case of like, you follow the training plan, you follow the nutrition plan, you're going to see results. And I found a lot more passion out of this crowd because, again, it was like I was speaking to me in a way. And I started to think, okay, long term, where do I want to take this? I said, okay, we're going to drop this offer and we're going to go all in on the social media, the business coaching. And I switched my offer and I said, this is what I focus on now.
So you dropped the training nutrition completely, and it's
completely.
Wow. Yeah. So how many people do you have on that side now, like that you're coaching?
Now I partner with Alfie, so it's been different.
So did you start off initially doing that on your own, and now then you've sort of just brought that into the Amplify
exactly
ecosystem?
So I had my own business, my own clients, my own offer, and then eventually found a place where Alfie and I had met, and I was a client of his. Then we ended up meeting in Bali, and then we just chatted, and we just got along really well. And he learned a little bit more about my story, being in corporate. I think we just clicked. Like, he is a business-minded person, and I just think we shared a lot of same values. We had some really good conversations, and we got to a point that we kept in touch for a while, and it just got to a point that it was like, well, let's just bring our businesses together here. Like, and I recognized what he had built, I could plug into that, but I could help a lot more people at scale by partnering with him. And I think I recognized at that point, it's like I'd spent so much time on my own in isolation, and then I was with him and some guys I really had a lot of shared values with for a week, and I recognized the power of like being around a community of people that you really shared values with. And I thought, wow, how cool would it be to build something together versus just like being on my own island somewhere.
Up until this point, Ned, it feels to me, just from chatting to you, that you've been on your own island for a very long time. How did it actually feel to eventually find your tribe, I suppose?
It felt pretty good. Bali was a big turning point for me. It was the first time in my life that I felt like I could really be myself, or be myself. I remember being there in Bali, and again, I met Alfie and all these other guys I had a lot of just an immediate strong connection with, like just immediately clicked. And again, it was a case of just like, I could be myself, and they saw the world the same way. They wanted to build something amazing. And I quickly realized like, wow, there's something powerful there of being around the right people. And yeah, I started to really reflect on, okay, where do I want to take this? Where do I want to take my business? Obviously saw what Alfie had built, and he got from 0 to 1, and it was a case of, okay, now he was thinking 1 to 100. That obviously now involves like bigger level thinking and bringing the right people around him. And it was a case of just us talking and getting to a point, like, obviously had a skill set that I could bring from the corporate world. He was looking for the right people. We got along really well. I believed in him and his vision, and it was a case of, yeah, let's just do this together.
So that's how the move from Bali to Bondi came about.
Yeah.
So you're now working at Amplify. So what's your role at Amplify now?
Head of B2B. Yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It means it's a case of like, how do we find, like, Alfie's whole mission is to lower the barrier to content creation. That's his whole vision of like, how can we make it as easy as possible for as many people to create content and step into the space. So that first started with the education, obviously what he teaches inside the community. Now he's building a tech product, which is an editing app. But he's just essentially trying to create a world where people can step into the world of content as easily as possible. My role has been now obviously bring in my coaching business inside the Amplify world. Is like, I'm contributing to his business by leveraging my brand, right? Because I have my own audience of 140,000 people from corporate that are interested in me and what I have to offer, and I help coach them under the Amplify hood. My job as head of B2B is to find more people like me, of people who, again, have an audience, have people that we can ultimately help, that might have their own offer, they might not have an offer, but give them an opportunity to now help people step into the world of content and leverage ultimately their audience to do that. And that could either be through the info, or that could be through the tech moving forward.
Nice, mate. The plan is to hang around Bondi for a bit longer then?
Yeah. Well, Alf and I live together now.
Yeah, beauty.
So we got 12 months late, so I'll be here.
So where to from here, Ned?
It's been hard because it's like, when I think about the road I've been on, I've only been doing this for a little over a year, which is hard to believe. So when I think, okay, now a year from now, there's so much that could happen. But I've now gotten to a point that I believe in what I'm building, what Alfie's building, what we can build together. And I don't know, I got to a point that I'm just really excited about where this could go. And again, I'm really passionate about helping as many people that were like me. And I know I have the vehicle to do that. I'm now in a place that I can help facilitate that with someone else that has that has a huge vision. And just like, I don't know, the idea of like, we're in the office whiteboarding, and it's just cool to now be around someone else that has that shared vision of like making an impact. And Alfie is incredibly smart and successful. And I don't know, just me in my room for so long, and now to be in a room with someone else that's like also trying to create something is pretty cool.
Awesome, mate. Look, final question from me this evening, Ned, and thank you for coming on and being so open and honest about your story.
Of course.
I want to take you back to that version of Ned who's just quit his job in New York. He's back in his New York apartment that evening. What words of advice would you give him? What did that version of Ned need to hear at that time?
I think there's a lot, but I think having the courage to design your own life is always a quote that's stuck with me. I actually have it on my wrist. I have it on a bracelet here. Like this idea of designing your own life and like having the courage to do that was something I didn't have for a long time. And I would really try to tell that person, like, what do you have to lose? Like, you get one go at this thing we call life. You might as well be happy and do something you enjoy. And, 40 years in a job that doesn't make you happy is not a way to make a living. And like, if you're really good at something you don't like, imagine how good you could be at something you do. And that's always the way I thought. And, if I told myself that, I think 12 months ago, it would have really helped.
It's a beautiful place to leave it, mate. Ned, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.